Hi everyone. Okay, so I had meetings with Float and Mentaya. I've also previously been a consumer for or user of Reimbursify. And we're talking about Superbill reimbursement platforms that help clients get reimbursed for the services that you provided. Um, all three different companies work differently, and it can be a little bit confusing to understand the differences. It took me a minute to wrap my head around how they all work, and I'm gonna try and make this as simple as possible. Maybe at some point I'll draw a graphic and share it in the group, but I wanted to share with you guys what I've discovered because I know a lot of people who have been using SuperPay with Superbill. That's ending, and so they won't be available to use that anymore. So I wanted to give you some my thoughts on what I've learned. Now, I want to start by saying it appears as though all three services are quality. I know that I've used Reimbursify in the past and it was a good experience. I had looked for something more integrated and more hands off for the client so that I could provide a more higher level concierge level type service for super billing and really take the responsibility off the client for submitting and paying for the submissions. But clearly that business model did not work so well. And so Superbill's not doing their thing anymore. And so I've looked at Reimbursify, Flow, and Mentaya. I'm going to start with Reimbursify because that's the easiest one. It's super simple. You sign up for a portal and you can either pay a monthly membership fee for your clients to submit for free, which may be actually depending on the structure of your practice and how many people submit might be worthwhile doing, or clients can pay $4 per claim per date of service. Excuse me. Clients can pay $4 per claim submitted, and Reimbursify states that they do help resolve denials. So that is part of the service. That's part of the $4 that you can then resubmit at no extra cost. So that's Reimbursify. As a clinician, I am hands off. I do have a portal with them that where they have correct information for me, like my NPI and stuff. But apart from that, I'm pretty much hands off, and there's nothing that I have to do in order to follow up with anything. And so it's really on the client to submit the super bills that I provide them to get reimbursed. So that's Reimbursify. That's probably the simplest of the solutions in terms of explaining it or understanding how it works. It's the most simple version. You sign up with Reimbursify, you enter your information. Once you've been processed, you go ahead and send clients information, and then the clients download the app, and they learn how to use it and submit super bills through the app. So super straightforward, super simple. Clients pay the $4, and that's it. Okay, Mentaya. So Mentaya does super bill processing. It's hands off for the most part for both the clinician and the therapist and the client for the most part. You can use them as a payment processor also. This is where things start to get confusing. So I have simple practice. So we're just there. I have simple practice. So I can either continue to use simple practice as my payment processor. I can sync my calendar with Mentaya, and that tells tells their system what appointments I've had, and it only shows the appointments for the clients that have onboarded with Mentaya. And that's if I want to continue using my own payment processor. And then once a session has happened, I get a notification and I say, yes, that's correct, a session happened. That way they're not submitting for sessions that didn't happen by accident. And then they charge for the submission, and then they do the submission. Now their charge is 5% of the full fee. You can either elect for you to pay it or for the client to pay it, but it is percentage based. It's 5% of the full fee. And then they handle all follow-ups and denials and anything like that. But nothing on the client's end has to happen other than them setting up their end of the portal. And so it's hands off. Now, if you use them as a payment portal, also, you can actually use them as a payment processor for all your clients. And I believe they said it's 2.9%. Right now, Simple Practice is at 3.15 plus 30 cents for each successful transaction. So there is a cost savings if you use them as a payment processor. But the question I have is reconciling the books. I don't know if that pushes to Simple Practice. That's actually a question I should ask them. I don't know if when the payment process is on their end, if that pushes back in the calendar sync to Simple Practice or not. If it does not, that means you have to go in and say and record payment in Simple Practice. So that is the only hiccup there, and that's one of the reasons I don't use an external payment processor for things like this, is because I don't want the admin time of that. That said, the founder was fabulous. She's lovely. I had a great conversation with her. Just really, it is really for a higher end experience, for a full like hands-off experience for the client. We talked about some of the decision making that they made on how they're pricing it and how they're structuring it, and it makes so much sense. It makes a lot of sense for them, for sustainability of the company, because honestly, insurance companies are difficult to deal with at times, and so the percentage based option makes a lot of sense. Now, the downfall of this one for me is that it's, especially if I elect to pay the 5% for filing and submitting, I'm paying 2.9% for payment, and then I'm paying another 5% for the Superbill submission. And so that starts to add up pretty good. We're looking at 7.9% of my full fee. And that's, well, for me, that's $27. So it starts to get really expensive really quickly. $27.65. So that's a good chunk of money out of my thing. Now, I can elect for the client to pay the 5%, but then I'm adding another 5% for those who want their super bills submitted. It's 5% of my full fee, and so it doesn't matter what they get back. They're paying 5% of my full fee, and that's, I think, $17. So that's a lot of money for them to be paying. And if they don't get anything back, they don't, that is refunded. So there's a guarantee with Mentaya that if you don't get money back, if the client doesn't get anything back, if the claim is not processed or is unable to be processed or whatever, or denied and can't be resolved, the fee for submitting gets refunded. So that's a nice guarantee. But again, at $17 for the client, or me, plus credit card processing fees, that adds up to $27+ per submission, and that's a lot. So that's my drawback there. Still, I would say that it's a good option, especially if your fees are on the lower end. That 5% is not as much of a hit. And if you switch from Simple Practice billing over, that may be a good option as well. And so there's definitely pros to it. It's definitely a higher end service. I think it's I like that they offer the option for either you or the client to pay the submission fee. So it's definitely worth looking into. It's worth doing the math on it. It's worth talking to the company and seeing if it's something that would fit for your practice. Going on to Float. This one's also pretty interesting. So with Float, this is the most complex. This is the most complex of all of the systems. And I get why they did it this way. So Float is very similar to Mentaya in the sense that you can use them as a payment processor only at 2.9%. And what's cool, again, I don't know if Mentaya does this or not, but with Float, when you sync to Simple Practice, the payment gets recorded in Simple Practice. So automatically you're not having to do the reconciliation where there's potential for errors in payment recording. So first pro is if you want to use them as a payment processor, payments get automatically processed and it's recorded back to Simple Practice automatically, so you're not reconciling. Second interesting thing about them is that they actually pay you, like they pay you, not your client. They pay you your full fee by bank transfer, so ACH transfer, so there's no fees associated with that payment. And they actually charge the client the payment processing fee because they offer payment options to the client. The client can pay via bank transfer, ACH, or credit card. And if the client chooses to pay by credit card, there's no additional fees. Or sorry, by ACH, there's no additional fees. I asked them about how this is legal. They said they did a deep dive on this. And basically that because they're giving the client options, either you can pay by ACH or you can pay by credit card. But if you pay by credit card, there's this additional fee, 2.9%. That allows them to do that. So they're not only giving one option. So from a cost perspective on a practice, using their payment portal saves you all of your payment processing fees, and the client becomes responsible for the payment processing fees. And the client, if they pay by bank account, can avoid those fees. Then they also have the Superbill reimbursement option. So they have two versions of this. Again, this is where things get complicated. First option, client runs payment through Float. I've already gotten paid, right? This is happening all without my knowledge. Client runs payment through Float, either by bank transfer or credit card. Client then pays $3 to have that Superbill submitted, and the reimbursement is sent directly back to the client. The client gets to choose, by the way, whether or not they even want to submit, right? So $3 to file a claim. So if they pay by credit card, it's 2.9% of the full fee. Then $3 for the submission, and then they get money back. Float also handles resolving denials. Second option, the client can choose to allow the company to float the difference. So if the client, if the session fee is $200 and the client would get $100 back and the remaining balance would be $100, then what happens is Float only charges the client $100, and then Float gets the reimbursement, the other $100 reimbursed. I hope that makes sense. So basically what Float is doing is waiting on the check from the insurance company on behalf of the client, and the client only has to pay the difference up front. This costs between 8 and 10% of the reimbursed amount. So if the reimbursed amount is $100, then they pay between $8 and $10 for that. For Float holding that responsibility for them. Now here's what's really interesting about Float, and this is kind of what perked my interest on them. I asked them about the payment feature, being a payment processor, and I said, I asked them what happens if a card gets declined, or if a client doesn't approve a payment or doesn't send the payment via ACH or whatever. And Float basically said well, that's on us. We've already paid you. You've gotten paid. You get paid within 24 to 48 hours by ACH transfer. We now hold the responsibility of collecting payment from the client. And so we manage that. And so I thought that was also really interesting, because now basically what they're saying is, as long as I'm charging appropriately, as long as my simple practice dashboard is up to date and the charges are accurate, they will handle billing, even for private pay, at 2.9% if they want. But again, the client pays that. So that perked my interest. It's interesting. I'm even thinking about this like from the perspective of a group practice and offloading all of the billing stuff. So that's interesting. Again, I think it's really worth looking into. I think there's still some like catches and interesting things that I would be looking at. It's kind of one of those things where, say, for example, if somebody no-shows and you don't want to charge them just yet because you want to see if like they're okay, then like the question is, do you go ahead and charge them and then process a refund later? So there's like little things to consider, like, do you hold off on charging? How does Float handle that, etc. and so forth. So using them as a payment processor in general is interesting, and I'm curious how they would handle some of those like unique circumstances, where you're wanting to like hold off billing somebody to see if they're okay after a no-show, or to like make a determination on a late cancel. But apart from that, it's promising in that it doesn't add administrative load. You get paid on time. They handle follow-ups for billing. Clients are responsible for the fees. So it's just a matter of how you want to handle that. So I'm going to be thinking about these options. I think that Reimbursify is a really good backup or like entry level version of this, because the free version doesn't cost you anything. It's only $4 for the claim to be filed. They do help with denials and resubmissions at no extra cost. And so it feels like a really entry level version of it. Whereas these other ones feel like they're more high tech, and require more integrations. Depending on your EHR, that may also determine what would work for you. A lot of the integrations with Float and Mentaya depend on having the highest tier simple practice membership or subscription, which not everybody has. So I hope all this makes sense. I've been kind of organizing it in my brain. I hope that I presented it in a way that makes sense to you guys. If you have questions, let me know. I think all three of these companies are really good options, and it's just a matter of figuring out which one's going to work best for your practice if you're deciding to offer this service. I'm going to be thinking about which one I'm going to offer. I'm going to have to figure it out pretty quick because the end of the month is coming up. And at the very minimum, I'll be offering Reimbursify as an option in the interim. If I do onboard with one of these other companies later, I may wait and give myself time. But even for those of you who are thinking about it but want to offer your clients something in the interim, Reimbursify might be a good option, because it is zero fee to get started and it's low cost for your clients. And then it can give you some time to think about integrating some of these other models and how that might affect your overall practice management organization. So that was a lot longer than I expected. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll see you later.